This is Disclosure Now, with Arkeen Ra and Brian Zeng, a show where we expose the truths that are nefariously hidden from humanity. Today we have a very special episode centering around the true legend of Sasquatch with our special guests Colontonio and Christoper Jacobs, who both have had direct experiences with Bigfoot. Welcome to Disclosure Now.
Hey everyone, welcome to Disclosure Now. As usual, just want to plug our conference, our physical meeting space. It's so wonderful meeting you all here on the internet on a regular basis. And we know that not everybody's going to be able to make it to this event, but everybody who can, we can't stress it enough. This is a big part of our work, and what we do is holding this event every year and getting everybody together in a physical meeting space. So please check out the website. Check it out, and without further ado, we have two very special guests with us today. We've got Mike, Long Island Bigfoot, and of course we have Christoper Jacobs, and I'm sorry, I'm spacing on your
Joanna
name.
Michaels.
Joanna Michaels. I'm so sorry. I'm bad with names, good with faces. I didn't know you were going to be with us today, Joanna, or I would have put you in the description, but I'm very happy that you are here with us. You guys are both part of the lifting.net, and Mike, you're a Long Island Bigfoot. We've had you on the show as well. So Mike's background is he's from the Long Island area. He's very into boots on the ground research of Bigfoot, other paranormal phenomenon, and of course we've also had Christoper and Joanna on the show, and they both are into psychic work. Channeling, healing, all that good stuff. So welcome to the show, guys. We're going to talk about Sasquatch today. I'm going to let, I guess, Christoper, I'll let you start. Why don't you explain to us what these beings are and why their presence is so, what's the word for it? Evasive. If you could just start with that, and then we can kind of just go from there and work our way up and really get to know these beings and who they really are.
Yeah, I found out that actually many years ago, they are be able to go into different dimensions and frequency shift. They're technically our cousins. They said they are, they of course they have a lineage here from long ago. Some said there was some of the genetics that came from space. Others were more grounded here. And they are considered to be another hominid type, but they're extremely advanced in the ways of frequency, in the ways of dimensional shifting, in the ways of any of that type of work. Well, there are some also that are more like us, where they stay in this same frequency. They stay, they work with glyphs, they work with sticks, tree structures, things of that nature. So you're dealing with actually a few different types of groups here. People have lumped them into one category, but the interdimensional ones are the ancestral line. They call themselves the Anakim line. Then you have the others that are the descendants of those that are mainly what people are, or see. In the Sasquatch grouping. Then, of course, you have some of the more extremely like caveman level type ones that are more barbaric. You have like a baboon type species, and you have like the skunk ape and the orang pendek and all of those types that are like the ones that are even further down the evolutionary scale. So from even us. So you have those types. Then you have, of course, other cryptids are mistaken for them, like dogman. There's bear type ones out there, other cryptids we don't need to go into, but then there are those that have been mistaken for Sasquatch as well. So with them, if I could sum them up into a nutshell, they are essentially, we would consider them more distant family, more dimensional based beings, not wood apes. They wanted to stress that enough in challenge. They're not wood apes. They're not, because we're comparing them to some of these other groups out there that would more qualify as that. So people have lumped them into all these other groups, even Neanderthal, not even close. They're related, but they're not that. No, people have mistaken all these other groups for them. And they, part of their lineage is alien, part of them is Earth, from what I can gather. And we are related to them because we're we're Earther, but we're also from out there. So they would say the same thing. We're essentially descendants of colonists that came here to Earth. They would say the exact same thing, but other hominid DNA got mixed in there as well. So they would essentially say that same thing.
And the why, I think, is because in the past, we all more vibrated close together in frequency. So we did interact with them. So some of the groups that he's saying are crossing over and are in a little bit different frequency, we literally saw them face to face. And what's happening now in the energies is as we're growing and expanding, we're getting closer and closer to literally being able to see those types of the Sasquatch. And in general, the goal is to go ahead and have a friendly introduction and understanding of them before that time happens, because really you have to imagine they really are huge beings and they would scare you like nobody's problem unintentionally. But the keys are now is that, again, they would call some of these other groups their distant stupid cousins, let's just say. So you have a huge range of them. Some of them, are more currently in our frequency and can more mischievous, more problems and things, but we're moving into an area of actually something of very high intelligent that wants to have a relationship with us that was once had.
Mm-hmm. Now I want to also point out, I have this picture of an actual photograph I put on this little coaster placard here of an actual one. So
one phasing in enough to be able to take a picture.
If I can get it closer, so you can.
And this is a question we could definitely see that. I mean, in the middle, and you can see it does have that phasing effect. Like, is it there or is it not? And that was a question I had for the Anakim line, the interdimensional ones. When they're phasing out of this 3D time space, are they all going to the same place? And if so, where is that?
They're not all going to the same place. They live in different areas of the world. I've run into a multitude of them. During people's sessions, I've caught their attention because I bilocate the different places. So I've caught the attention of forest people in different parts of the planet as well. And almost all of them that I can see can telepathically speak. There's some that are below that psionic line that can't completely connect like that. So they use the stick glyphs and symbols and things of that nature. But there are other ones that those Sasquatch groups would consider almost like guides or gods, because they're that far apart psionically. But to answer your question, there are different colony groups all over the country. Think North America for a second. Most of them that I have been able to see have been Lemurian descent lineage, like from the west coast. But I have seen others where the lineage bonded with more Asgardian Viking lineage as well, where I've seen those two fuse as well, where you can tell by the names of them. I've also seen where there's some Middle Eastern interbred into there as well. So I've actually seen a lot of those type of mixes. Up in Canada, I see, when I read people up in Canada, I see like the ones that have the shorter necks, that they have the larger, I call them no necks, that's rude, but they're like this. That is more the Lemurian descent lineage when you see this. So I saw that out in Arizona a lot. That was part of ancient Mu, Lemuria, so I saw that a lot. And in areas like of California, also Vancouver Island was part of Mu as well, from what I understand. So a lot of the forest people conglomerate in these areas. You see that in Australia, where you see the Yowie. Some of them are like this as well.
So Christopher, let's say there's a Sasquatch tribe in the U.S. versus, say, in Australia, like the Yowie. Mm-hmm. And when this one tribe, when they phase out of our reality and they go invisible and they go somewhere else, where would they go, for example, like say the Tennessee group?
No, well, they are still literally here. They would still literally be in Tennessee. It's just that they're in a
so they're still within this. Okay, so they're still within this reality. They didn't go anywhere else, but they're still within this reality. Right. And the reason why I ask.
It's like an overlap almost. Like for instance, you'll hear what I call phantom footsteps. I can hear them walking with me, or walking around, or but I can't necessarily see them visibly. Now, And that's like a vibration frequency issue, right? Like they're physically right there. Now, if I can manage to tap in, or they choose to tap into my frequency, like they can come visible and show themselves. You know what I mean? To that extent.
But Mike, it's one thing for them to be walking around and you can hear them, but you can't see them. But what about
Yeah.
where it's like snow and it's like you've got the tracks and then the tracks
It's
disappear?
because the frequency they are in, they don't necessarily have to leave those tracks. When you see the tracks, they're either a young adolescent or young one, or they intend to leave them so you find them.
Okay, because I was assuming that they went somewhere else where those tracks
So I
disappeared.
think this is a very interesting and this is like a great like introduction to the Bigfoot as far as what we're examining here at this point of the conversation is the fact, just like the nature of the universe, like how reality works, how frequency works. It's some of it, as far as what I've thought, like have come to understand, is I think they want to maybe avoid us a little bit because of the way that we are. I mean, think about the way we are. They seem very peaceful while we are very warlike. So that could be just a self-protection thing. But also talking about the nature of frequency and the fact that some of these beings literally are, it's like reality sort of a radio frequency, and they're just on a slightly different tuning to where you can kind of interact with them a little bit and they can kind of interact with you. It's sort of like that. And this kind of, for me, tying into my experience with the Montauk Project and things like that, is this is has to do with hugely a part, like a very hard part of the universe for people to understand, is the fact that reality does work in such a way where it is frequency, and there are phenomena that occur, like for instance when we would change the timeline, right? Mandela effects are leftovers. You've probably all experienced Mandela effects, right? The monocle on the Monopoly guy, or the Fruit of the Loom logo, or I Am Your Father, or whatever it may be. We all have at least one or two where we're like, damn, it really did change. Like nobody can, you know what I mean? And what was shown in both the Adam Project and also Netflix show Inside Job is when they changed the timeline, and this is accurate, they're showing you there'll be these leftovers, and sometimes they literally will have to go in and kind of surgically remove these leftovers, because otherwise our timeline won't stay anchored in the new timeline we created, and it will unravel itself. So what I'm getting at here, not to overtake the conversation, is from a scientific quantum standpoint, we don't understand the universe very well at all. And that's why Bigfoot is this ha joke kind of thing, kind of this campy thing where you see it on mugs. I live just not even an hour drive away from what's called the National Bigfoot Center. It's like a tourist trap instead of being an actual thing that, as it should be. They deserve like more respect than kind of what they're given. They're treated as like a fairy tale. And what we're getting at here, what I'm trying to help add with my own testimony, is the fact that it's not that it's incredibly far out there or bizarre or not real, and or that there's not proof. There's obviously a bunch of proof. Like I remember the first time I came out here to Oregon, where I live now, talking to some of the locals that lived in the more, not cities, but like more in the like rural areas, and they're just like, yeah, Bigfoot's real. My uncle's seen him, Larry's seen him. You know what I mean? It's like they're out here, man. We know to watch out for them. So like some people, just because of the way our brains are trained or whatever, it's like a foreign concept to them where they think it's very bizarre. But what people need to understand is there's a lot of people throughout the world who live closer to these beings, and you know what I mean? There actually are dense populations near them, and a lot of people in those areas just straight up understand that it's real. And it's one of those things where unless you experience it like that when you're living close to it, it might seem like people may be smoking a bit too much reefer out in the woods or something like that. But we've found way too much physical evidence, and just too many people have had experiences, too many like people who are definitely not smoking reefer in the woods. Like we got on duty officers and things like that who have encountered these beings. So like I'm just trying to just point out here to the listeners, both not present and in the future, that this phenomenon, while it might seem very far out there, it's very grounded in reality.
Right. And I think what some people, again, we talk about hard to wrap your head around, is that, I always just go back to your regular dogs and cats everyone swears they're seeing way more than what we're seeing because they're seeing into a broader spectrum. So when we create and we're in this vibrational frequency, I like to say an octave on a piano. We're in this octave that then we can see everything, but standing in the same spot is another octave and another octave and
Yes,
another, layering that.
yes.
And
That's
so
such
what
a
they have
beautiful
the
way of
ability to
explaining
do
it.
is cross between them.
They use
So
the vocals to cross
they
between
can
them.
cross not all of them. Again,
Some
we're
of them
trying
do,
to
yeah.
explain that there's different groups, but it's onion layer type of effect because it's really hard to wrap your head around the massness, the unbelievableness of experience and what's going on.
And that is why 13 is a sacred number, by the way, is because there's 12 tones and half tones, 12 tones in total, basically. I count them all. And then you get to 13, and that's the next octave. So that's why it's actually a sacred and important number, not a cursed number, if that makes any sense.
That's why the church decided they were going to try to curse it. Yeah.
So
exactly.
Again, yeah, some of the physics, that have generally been used, are limiting in these types of thoughts. The newer physics that are coming out, the theories explain it all. It's just a matter of bringing that more into everyday life and showing how all of that works together. But, and again, there are humans that can certainly go into some of these areas where they have a whole colony that you're not looking at right there. And they will do things like they know we're at this precipice of being able to see. They know that we're starting to feel. They know all of these precursors are beginning to happen. And again, without any preparations for the meeting, it would be a horror show if for some reason that we met them, because our response would be to protect our species, and they would be so scary. So the goal now, again, with a lot of these conversations and little bits of information found, is to prepare for that inevitable re-meeting, I should say, not new meeting, re-meeting that's going to be occurring. But again, one of the things that they have stressed to us is the fact that they have cousins. It's not just they're not all on the same page. And so just like with human beings, you have to discern and assess and know what you're dealing with. But a lot of people are having those feelings like Mike's talking about. I can sense it. I can, feel it. And it's definitely occurring. The one thing that we say is that, but you need to understand that if you're encroaching, that you can't see this colony, this nursery, this family structures that are going on, they're going to get you somehow to back off. And they can send those psionics. They can send these things. I think the big deal that we always stress is that you need to honor that, because they're trying to say, whoa, just like if they came in and were invading our neighborhoods, right? That we don't want conflict or fear or problems. You need to honor that and back away. So it's this slow disclosure also with them to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yes. Also, when you were also talking, Kim, about the remnants of other timelines, I just dawned on me in Doctor Who, they called that those concepts a never were, like a remnant from another timeline. It was essentially a timeline gets erased, and you were seeing like all these figures like they were standing in Pompeii. That is the Doctor ends up looking around, calls these are remnants, these are a never were. That's the language he used. I thought that was very interesting. You brought that up because I feel like some of these instances, these dimensional instances, are this. But yeah, the forest people, they've explained to us, like when we went out to Spirit Lake, for instance, they explained to us that they tried multiple times to communicate with people in that area, and either ideologically they were too far apart, or energetically frequency, they were too far apart to actually do any form of communicating. They would either spook them, somebody would think they were a demon if they
And
had.
this kind of goes into like the Agartha concept too. Like I was watching one of my good friend Alondra Markman's recent interviews, and he was talking about how one of the great things about Agartha, meaning like the inner Earth people, the inner Earth stuff that's going on, is their frequency is different to ours to such a point where they're like trying to go in there, they're trying to get in there and I guess invade, get resources, whatever. I mean, that's what our government does, right? And they just can't because it exists like on a different frequency, sort
A
of like,
higher.
yeah, exactly, a higher one. And you, if you're rooted in like a sour place, like a bad place, like it sounds silly, it sounds like
No, it's no, it's
mojo,
true.
but it's true. You can't enter into their
Well,
realm.
I won't even go into the woods if I'm in a bad space because I'm not going to find Sasquatch necessarily, right? Because the other things out there are going to, just like when I go out there in a positive vibe and a positive frequency, and I'm going out there and I'm putting everything out there to receive the positivity of the Sasquatch. If I go out there in a negative headspace, negative heart space, not sober, whatever the case is, the negative entities out there are going to hone in on me, and now the
Oh
Sasquatch
yeah,
can't
and
necessarily
I've seen that personally,
protect you,
guys.
yeah, and you know, and these things will even pose as Sasquatch at times, because if that's what you're looking for, they're going to come in and pretend to be that,
Trickster
and
entities, yeah.
yeah, and become the monster, you know what I mean? And you know, there's so much bad information, right? Like, oh, you know, Sasquatch are this physical thing, and they're walking the waterways, and that's where they are. You have to find the waterway, and that's not necessarily the case. It's, again, going back to frequency and vibration. And I don't care who you are, where you come from, when you go near water, you calm down. Like you just naturally like go into a state of a different state of mind in general, right? Like go to the beach and like stare at the ocean, or just stare at a babbling brook, and you're going to find this like peace just from that alone, you know what I mean? That natural, and that's kind of some of the stuff you need to, like, some of the area you need to be in to connect with these guys.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this. Let's run these two scenarios.
Yeah.
You're going out into the woods, and just like Joanna was pointing out, you're entering an area that it's kind of like their nursery or their family barbecue area. I don't know, not that they barbecue, but and they have like the X's crossed where the branches laying across the ground with like the bent thing that kind of, I guess, signals, you know, please don't come here. And if you're in a bad mood, obviously, okay, you're not going to see them. You might even attract negative entities. Now, if you're in a good mood and you're going to be more able to interact with them. But then my question is at the point where they're phasing to a higher vibration, to the point where they're still here on Earth, but a higher vibration Earth, but they're not messing with the snow in front of us. What does it look like for them? Are they now on a higher Earth where it's like it's greener, there's more animals, there's less pollution?
Some color difference, you know, like some a little bit to us, it would look almost like things were glowing, kind of like a fairyland. There are some that are in different separate dimensions too, but the ones that are actually just phased into a faster moving vibration, it just looks like everything else, except you're seeing the trees glow a little more. You're seeing the ground, feeling everything kind of hum a little more. And also another, to your point with being in a bad space, there's also in a chemically ridden space as well that they don't like. It's like if you have too much sugar in your body, or if you have too much of a toxic food in your body or something like that, you'll be too far apart from them to communicate as well. They basically would say that's not all of our fault because we're being poisoned by different foods and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Cookies.
No, of course, yeah,
No,
and you know, and
you're channeling.
not the X is one thing, but now, like, when you're talking about the bends and the tree snaps and certain things like that too, that can be a misconception as well. Like, somebody will see a huge tree snap and be like, oh, there's a giant Sasquatch here too, and they're forest stewards, right? So like, now they care about that forest. That is their home. They're taking care of it. So if a tree falls naturally and dies, it's uprooted, it falls and dies. They will try and take the nearest tree and try and bend it and tuck it into it to reconnect that energy to that dead tree. If they can't bend it, they'll break it. But they're trying to keep it together. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to keep that energy flowing through it. And so they will break it at a certain point. It's all sacred geometry. Wherever they break it at is to make it reach that down, broken, dead tree. And then that's still rooted and it's now connected back. And, I always call them multi-elementals, which is, it's a complete understatement. But they are connected to anything and everything in that forest. You know what I mean? And that's my goal when I enter. I don't go in with necessarily a mission or a goal or, not to compare them to God, but when they say like, oh, when you have a plan, God laughs. Like when you go into that forest, if you have a plan, like Sasquatch laughs, So I go in and I just kind of say, hey guys, like I'm here. Teach me something today if you'd like to. I would love to be part of that. Like I'd love to see what you got, what you want to show me. And
it sounds like it's almost good to just go in there with that mentality, to just try to be like the Sasquatch and just be one with the forest and just vibe with everything and just feel at peace with it. And then it'll just naturally like bring you there to that level.
So the one thing that they've always told us, that one thing that we, our race, human race, in order, to really deal with some of the challenges and the energies, either natural or unnatural, that are coming our way, how do you deal with that to keep yourself in a place then that you can expand within? How do you face this? They call it the annulum. They have a way they say it, the annulum. And that's the kind of, I always say to people, when you're in the worst of stress, can you put yourself in neutral? It's almost like finding the neutral. And basically, can you put yourself there so that you're not bombarded by other things, so that you can receive different frequencies, more information, more understanding? But they refer to it as the annulum. And they stress that over and over again, which, Mike, sounds exactly, from your descriptor, exactly what you're trying to do to get yourself into that space that allows for that, intuitiveness or direct communication or whatever you want to call it, that you can now hear that frequency or hear the messages to be able to gain more and to expand. Mm-hmm. But it's huge. It's huge for humanity as a whole to understand that particular principle and to work on being able to put yourself there in challenging emotional moments. Because if not, just like Mike is saying, that, it will be difficult for new frequency, new information to come through with all of that scattered other stuff going on. Mm-hmm. You just have to be able to work on getting yourself there, and then things open up.
Yeah, and the technological noise is a biggie too. If you have a bunch of V2K operating all over the place, it is going to be damn hard to actually hear them. I've made devices to where we can hear different beings ground enough to where I can.
Why do you think that it's that way in the first place, where there's all these frequencies that are attacking us from all angles all the time? I think that it was intentionally put up because that we're going through a frequency change, right? Where we are raising our frequency, and I feel like these 5G technologies, and this is for entertainment purposes for you YouTube sensors out there, but I just feel like a lot of these 5G frequencies, they're literally, that's why they're there, not to make your internet faster, but to send V2K out at people. And not only that, just in general, dull the frequency and keep the vibration down. Like, there's not very many places you can go where there aren't these frequencies. I know there's a spot in the Appalachian Mountains, which I'm wondering how it is now after the Hurricane Helen, but where there's a telescope and they don't have all the 5G towers around and stuff like that. I wonder what would happen if someone were to go Bigfoot hunting out there in those woods. I bet you they might find some stuff.
So I think one of the things, though, to say, because I don't want people to feel so limited, is that, what the way to look at it is more of where can I go where the least amount of that is influencing or coming my way? Oftentimes, of course, dense forest, because the trees provide that protection. What we found out, and again, we can have communication at the ocean, as you're saying, the water or the waterways that are moving, not stagnant, waterways that are moving, is that, that powerful frequency can be very healing towards a lot of people, and the interference is harder to penetrate.
Yeah, back in the day, they used to actually, like, if you were sick, I can't remember what they called it, but they would literally send people to the ocean or to the sea. They literally go to the
ions of the ocean can be quite healing. So
that's why they kept people during the whole pandemic. That's why they kept people away from the ocean, because they wanted them to stay safe.
The beaches.
Yep.
Well, there's deer. I forget what the disease is called, but they get this purple tongue, and it hangs out of the side of their mouth, and they basically are about to die, but they will find their way to the beach, and they go and they sit there for a couple of weeks, and they don't really eat, they don't really do much, they just lay there, and the salt brings them back, like it heals them. And I forget what the exact disease is called necessarily, but they call it like purple tongue or something like that. But
yeah, so that's like we're just really getting into the very deep territory of frequency and what affects frequency and how that all works. And yeah, water is a really powerful thing. Like, for instance, it holds memory. It carries messages and stuff like that.
It's an information highway, absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
well, were some of them at our conference in Florida at St. Pete Beach this July? And then did the beach and that waterway, the ocean there, the Gulf Coast side, help them to manifest somehow, or were they just?
Yeah, most definitely. There were lots of them that came through. They wanted a voice at the conferences. It's usually a lot of aliens that come and go from the conference. Sasquatch usually has their own. That's usually why they like to have their own corner of like different conferences. They're like, no, we want a seat at this table. So they had me bring all the Sasquatch statues that I had. This time, I'm having more. I'm bringing these guys to these feet, and I'm also going to have a lot more of them this year. Yeah, they can definitely talk through those. They wanted to be either given out to people or sold there.
And they can also be in cities, because again, their frequency perception of what they're living in versus ours can be slightly different. So people, there are places that they will avoid. Normally, they're going to avoid places where there are other cryptids or other races that are currently actually existing there, and they don't need a conflict. So, but they actually, can be in places that people wouldn't typically think of it, because again, our perception is our world that we currently see, and it could be slightly different.
The higher vibrational Earth, that cityscape, which is kind of meh, might be actually more of a beautiful parkland.
So it's the concept when so we talk about that in general through all of our talks, where we talk about, even for us in our visual perception, there is land that is of higher frequency vibration and land that is of lower. Of course, just straight go to a place that there's been nothing but war. That sense energy has now absorbed into that land. Versus, one land mass that, again, we've always said is imported is Japan. Japan actually vibrates at a higher frequency. The entire land mass is pretty incredible. And why people so much love, the trees that were brought over and things.
The cherry blossom trees.
Because those cherry blossoms vibrate at a higher frequency. So we have that in currently the whole frequency issue, which is key to everything, as everyone here is talking about, to understanding that. And then again, when we grow, we're normally facing some sort of energetic conflict, and how are we going to handle it? And then as we grow, but to be more helpful in that, to be able to get ourselves into our own mind space in this place, to be able then to bring in the energies, to bring in the information, the intuitiveness that many, most all people have it, they just don't recognize it yet, and then be able to kind of grow through it. Unfortunately, there is that side of humanity and let's just say other unpleasant galactics that are out there that don't like the idea of these reunions happening.
Because we once had a strong alliance with them, and they don't want to see that.
So that whole conversation of the let's just say another side that's basically trying to hold people down, create false frequencies to aim at people to keep them down. All of that stuff is very real.
Psionic dampening going on.
It all is very
Yeah, there was soft disclosure even in Stranger Things with the upside down, right? Like, I mean, it's it's right there for you. It's, you know, it's entertainment, but there's also, you know, little
Disclosure.
Easter eggs. There's Easter eggs of reality.
right. It's meant to be that way, these little things, because there is a requirement to have some information go out that is true. As we say right now, nothing is free of it yet. There's nothing free of the there's got to be truths in some things for people to resonate to it. But then what happens is that the information begins to change to more of a planned dialogue to control the information that is really still present.
We're very painfully familiar and aware of that.
Yes. So
right
all
now.
of that is still there. The forest people, the Sasquatch people, they're right in the midst of all that too. Because again, you have to imagine, you know, the military know about them. They know about the military. They have interactions. They're on occasions, as Chris can talk about, where sometimes they'll work together for a problem. There's other races that are not seen that people don't know about that live right here with us.
Well, let's talk about that, because Jason H. In the audience, who's a stalwart with us, among a lot of others in our audience here, Andromedan, Garrow of Midwest, Q17, Doug, and everyone else. They asked, do they stay away from other cryptid out of respect or territory? And you already kind of mentioned that, where there's a respect thing, but then you did recently a very important show about these aquatic Draco reptilians that are here on the Earth that are very similar to the monsters depicted in Jeepers Creepers. And then you said there were like several million of these bad boys here.
Yeah, they're in a different frequency. It's somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. And what ended up happening?
Is that like near Devil Island or anything like that?
I believe, yeah, it's up in the like I believe it's closer to Devil Island in that area.
Because I think Renetta Jones says there's like a spider queen there as well, or something.
Yeah, there's like these spider cryptids that the forest people are absolutely creeped out by. Then the ones that are really creeped them out are these aquatic Draco. The regular ones, yeah, they can handle it. It's these weird like Jeepers Creepers types that have weird regenerative capabilities and everything. And
so what's their agenda compared to, say, our Sasquatch brethren?
The Draco ones, they're just in domination control, and
they'll eat their own kind if they're weak. Like they don't.
Yeah, most definitely.
Literally,
I keep forgetting about that particular Draco type all the time. There was I remember the regular ones, but all of a sudden it just kept getting wiped from my mind. That I'm supposed to be remembering another type that's out there, and it kept my friend Richie kept reiterating, going, "It's these guys that are wiping this from your head."
Yeah, you know, we have like holidays, like like Christmas and stuff like that, where we have little rituals like giving people gifts. Well, I do know that a common ritual in Draco culture is a holiday where they kill their weak.
Yep.
They kill the weak.
Yeah.
And it's a point of pride and tradition.
Well, they eat them too. So yeah, I know.
So they're like brutal, man. There's a reason why they're such fierce warriors. It's because they do not accept any weakness in their society.
Yeah, so it's like a cannibalistic Thanksgiving dinner.
And it's and not to overly make it too broad, because there's different kinds of reptilians, and not all of them are bad, and not all of them are doing this kind of stuff. But it's fairly common, and they kind of lean towards that direction. Not to be speciesist or anything, but I think even most reptilians would admit that that's true.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
There was also a show on years ago, not the sidetrack. That was it was like, I believe it was like the Lost World or something like that, where there was this series where this group gets lost in this jungle setting, and they come across like the typical jungle girl type, and then there's like other cryptid types they run across, and they run across this society of reptilians, and they run across this one by the name of Tribune, and he actually befriends them for a little while. But then he goes back to, well, he had been banished. He goes back to his tribal area. He defeats the leader, and the first thing he does is basically tear him apart and eat him. And it was like, and they're like, ew, and he's like, hey, it's our way. You know, you have your way, I have mine. You know, that kind of thing.
But to bring it back to the conversation at hand, which is the forest people, the Sasquatch, I think one of the areas that people are going to end up having to truly open their mind. We like to talk about, of course, everything not seen because it affects us directly. But so you have to know that besides the Sasquatch people, there are other cryptids out there that have their own families, colonies. There are other races out there that are also seated and now on this planet that have their own territories and are trying to expand. And so one of my questions that I always want to know, because I gotta like to compare it to how humanity's doing, how's that unity going, right, with these other races and these other groups? Because again, for us, I think the experience humanity would like to try to go down is now, how do we have a unity that is a voluntary, let's get along? How do we bring that back? It's no different for them. So, you know, these problems that we faced in humanity about getting along and playing nice in the sandbox are some of the same issues that are faced by some of these races that we don't necessarily see currently easily with our own eyes. And so, you know, people are like, why can't we just have this? And it's like, well, because it's a much more complicated story than people.
Let me ask that this because I want to do a summary kind of a lot of the shows that I've watched on your channel. What is it on YouTube? What is it called? I forget the exact name. Is it just under your name, Christoper S. Jacobs?
Oh yeah. If you look up Christoper S. Jacobs, that's the YouTube channel. I'm migrating a lot over to Rumble just for safety reasons, just in case something happens to the YouTube. I'll put all the pertinent links out there, but yeah, for now it's there. Yes.
And so, right, you've shared a lot of information about how in the past and a lot of times Sasquatch, like the other cryptids, like in national parks and areas of U.S. military, the derp state, they've literally hunted these beings down to genetically farm them or put them into hybridization programs.
Mm-hmm.
Other times when we've run across, say, other nasty cryptids like the aquatic Draco, and we need help with them because they're apparently very hard to deal with. Then we'll try to recruit the positive Sasquatch to kind of team up because your enemy is my enemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you also mentioned that, you know, is really interesting that and I've heard them say this through you, Christoper, that they avoid most of the other conferences because they're, like Joanna was pointing out, focused on ETs and not the Sasquatch. They'd rather go to the Sasquatch oriented ones, but they did make it a point to come to ours. And then a lot of people have talked about the UFO Sasquatch connection. And so, you know, on the one hand, there are a lot of times the Sasquatch seem to want to avoid ETs, but then other times it seems like people notice that, oh, look, there's a UFO. Oh, wait, there's also a Sasquatch. What's that interlinking of those two phenomena?
Well, they're seeing also different groups of them too. They're seeing ones that actually have interdimensional craft type capabilities, like the Anakim lineages and things of that nature. They're also seeing that some aliens are abducting.
Wait a second. So some of the more these advanced interdimensional telepathic Anakim Bigfoot, they also have their own UFO craft.
Yeah,
you have to remember what we were saying in the beginning about them being colonized here. So way back in the day, you've got to imagine the grand experiments that was going on this earth, that so many different races came from out there. So the one thing, you know, that we talked to them, I was talking to them recently also about, was the fact that their ancestors that are, and again, this Anakam line.
So is this like Chewbacca? Is this like what's depicted in Star Wars as Chewbacca and they're
That's
playing
more
Kashyyyk,
Dogman.
or is this different?
That's more Dogman. Chewbacca would be like more like in the Seminole tribe had a word called Wauki, meaning swamp dweller, and that's where Lucas got the name from.
So you have to remember that the lineage that goes back to some of the ones that were planted here and came down to Earth, they're homeward, they exist. And so what you have to imagine, and again, and they know that there's been hybridization. So again, you have to look at, there are benevolent races that are out there that are going to the Galactic Senate, that are advocating for their colonists, that are advocating for the colonists,
I see, because to them it's oh, hey, our colonist cousins that got ditched in a craft 30,000 years ago, like they're down there, and like so we're here in the Galactic Senate representing them and try to advocate for them.
Exactly.
Advocating. Yeah. So that's part of, not to. I think this is good to say. This is good to try and give a huge picture of what's actually going on, because it's relevant to, what's coming forward as far as information. It's very hard for human being to look at anything that looks like an animal, because we're the alpha race here and we think we're the alpha race, but we're actually not. But right. But it looks that way, and it's very hard for people to wrap their minds, but it's so much even bigger than that. And so again, when you think about even out there, you have to think about, where did some of these colonists come from? Like the Japanese, the Intumban race, they're out there, they're advocating. They want to see the original construct of the idea, because most planets out there are single race, of how can we put something together and unify it. And it was working for a while. And how can we then get back to that? So there's a lot of positive things that are going with a lot of these races that, again, the goal is, can we all just get along? For humans in general, as Arkeem was saying, that we are at a place in our individual growth and our growth as a society, that we are just expanding in our frequency, that some of these things, we're not listening to what we're told to think. We're intuiting something else. And so there's a lot of effort to try and tamp that down, right? To try, because again, as I've said before, there will be, and again, there's nothing changed with things that we've been saying for years, the attempt to have a presentation of what they want galactic history to be and how we're moving forward, right? People that are in control want to stay in control. They want to present the history. They want to present, the future. They want to present it in a way that actually, again, benefits them, not necessarily everyone else. The Anakam, the Sasquatch, again, Chris and I, and how we feel, we're not for that. We're more of an organic unity, that if you're more truthful with people, that, something positive will arise. They agree with that. That's another reason we get a lot of communication, to just try and get out our understanding of what is more real out there, and then leave it for people to discern themselves. But it's way bigger. It's just so much bigger than people can imagine. But first and foremost, get to the basic. If you want to grow and expand, you've got to find your way to that Analum center space. And then basically, if you want to commune with Sasquatch, again, go to places that you feel naturally bring you peace. If that could be the ocean, that could be, again, when I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, there were certain places in downtown Raleigh that were well treated and beautiful. You just felt at peace sitting there. Right? It can be there. And then
when you're there, you're telepathically communing with them, and are they then they're going to reach out to you, and then is it more of like a telepathic communication with any other being, but you're connecting with them because
similar, that's on dialing the frequency that psionic frequency happens.
If you have more of that ability, but for regular people, there still could be communion with somebody, but it is about peace. It is about, you would have thoughts of building bridges instead of tearing them down. Do you see more of it doesn't have to be this knowing channeling.
Absolutely. And they watch everything about you too. Like people just assume like, oh, I'm just gonna go out here and I'm gonna have this Sasquatch encounter. Like they're watching you and how you act in that forest too. Like way before you might know it. So if you're walking around throwing rocks at squirrels, kicking rabbits, shooting BBs at birds and stuff, you know, like for instance, when I have a campfire, if I need more wood, I really respect that tree branch and tree that I'm about to cut down for my firewood. I really, you know, I thank the forest for giving me that warmth, and you know what I mean, and all of that. You know, all these things come into play, and you have to have such like a healthy respect for like the oneness of everything. Now, these are the biggest, baddest mofo's in the forest, but they still treat themselves as equal to, you know, a deer is a deer, a rock is a rock, a tree is a tree, a Sasquatch is a Sasquatch, a human is a human, right? So we're all on the equal playing field and equal plane, and we all need to just get on this, you know, evil playing field and connectivity, vibration, frequency, whatever the case, right? And somebody asked earlier, do they, you know, do the cryptids get together and this and that? And maybe not so much all the time, but the way I kind of look at it too is they have to at some points, kind of like how we have to ride planes with people we don't know, and like or ride buses with people we don't know, or whatever, you know, or similar to the safari, how all these animals that might not, you know, be around each other regularly, like the zebra, the gazelle, the cheetah, the lion, they all have to come to that watering hole. I think they all come to the, you know, the portals or whatever the case may be together, right? But it's so much different. Like I always say, like we're as humans, we're the only things that are on the outskirts, and then you have people like, you know, they're sitting here right now trying to give everyone the key to success, but people won't take that key and put it in the door. You know, they'll just keep banging their head against the wall and doing it the wrong way. You know, and it just
so Mike, these are the people who go bigfooting with like shotguns.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I try to tell them, I say all the time, I don't carry. When I go out, I don't carry. You know what I mean? And I don't know. You know, I get it if you have to carry bear spray or something in case you get mauled or whatever. All right, I get it.
That's a vibrational thing. If you go out there and you have this fear and you're carrying around a gun, that's not going to bode well on these Sasquatch. And I actually got told by one of these blue beings, it was a Shiva being, she told me how us humans, like, we don't understand that just the act of, like, creating a gun, having a gun, all of that, it comes from fear. Every bomb dropped, and that vibration, it's a vibration that you put off. There's only two vibrations, love and fear. Everything else is just a variance degree, a varying degree of the either. It's like hot or cold, right?
Yeah.
And if you go into that forest and you're coming from a place where you've got a gun and you're thinking about some sort of violent encounter, that's automatically putting you into a place of fear and automatically heavily limiting your chances of having an encounter with these beings that very clearly do not operate in that frequency.
But again, we do say the one thing we say again, remember we said there's different varieties. So I would add to exactly what you're saying with this. If you be aware and communicate with others like us, that can give people idea of where the more higher advanced ones are, because again, exactly everything you're saying. What tends to happen with people, because again, some of them have the animal mentality in their mind, but they may be in places where they shouldn't be going. They are the lower levels. They shouldn't be. And then they push beyond that reasonable fear. They're trying to do whatever. And that's always a recipe for disaster when you're trying to have a genuine moment of peace with, I would say, the higher frequency level one. So you have to understand there's more than one frequency. You need to stay away, literally, from the areas where the more lower frequencies are living. And if, again, you want to feel fear, go up even to a higher frequencies of nursery area or their family area. Get scared, Jesus out of you, but they're going to do it to make you go.
To get out.
Right. And I did that once on accident, and it was ignorance at the time, right? It was complete ignorance, and I didn't know that I was approaching a nursery. I had no idea. And something I learned is it's not like females in the nursery. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like females that protect the nursery. It's the biggest, baddest mofo alpha, like, you know what I mean? Like, they have a big boy there protecting the babies. And he gave me this guttural growl, and I immediately knew I did not need to, go further. And I'm so sorry. I apologize. I backed up. I still didn't know what happened. But I knew I needed to backpedal. And I reached out to my friend. He's a Native American. He said, I showed him the footage and stuff, and he was like, "You were in a nursery." And I was like, "Okay, all right. All right." So this was like my learning process, which I had to, I had to take time and sit down and really, really start to understand that whole thing.
Well, Mike, you've got excellent footage that you shared recently in the group where it shows the Sasquatch teepees, and you were earlier talking about how they'll bend the branches and stuff. I was wondering if Christopher and Joanna could explain more about these teepee things, and maybe Mike, if you could pull up that image and share your screen for the audience.
I don't know if I know how to share, but
I can do it. I can share it while Christopher maybe.
I actually went there this morning. My dog, I had to put my dog to sleep yesterday, my service dog, and it was one of his favorite places to go. And I got up around 5 a.m. and went there, and it was still dark for a couple hours. And I forgot my flashlight. I had this flashlight that was like this big, but I didn't fear anything. You know what I mean? Like, I don't fear anything, but so I'm like walking around, and I'm just like talking to them, and I'm just like saying, like, "Hey guys, like, I'm sure he's there with you somewhere, and you can reach him better. Take care of him for me." And and as I'm at this giant teepee, it's probably a good 50 feet tall, this particular one, and I turn and I just see these red glowing eyes, and yeah, it might scare some people, right? Like,
Can you see my screen right now?
Oh, let me present it for you here.
oh yeah, there's one, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that thing's big. Okay, and then you got another.
Yeah.
Is that the same one? Just a different
No, it's a different one. There's a whole bunch. People knock them down. People, sometimes they catch on fire. They always build new ones.
So here you are at night around this teepee. And
oh, wow. Yeah, this was this morning. Yeah, like very early morning.
And then you see these red eyes, or at least one red eye that I saw. It pops up soon in here. Because you're pointing it right there.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Is there another one?
Yep. I shine. Yep.
That I think over there is maybe there's a huge farm back there, so maybe that's like a blinking light at the farm.
Okay, that might be a farm blinking. Okay, that's right. It is blinking. But
Yeah.
that one.
There, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was like glowing. I mean, like glowing red.
So then, Christopher, what is this like this teepee phenomenon? Like, I guess for the rain and the cold at night, and like how many can fit in there?
Yeah, that particular Sasquatch that you caught there, the reason they do the red eye, I'll go into that for a minute. That is because, again, you're approaching an area you probably shouldn't be in, and that's basically a warning. They do that for hunting. They do that for warding people off, as the red eye one. Yellow is more caution, like you'd expect a traffic light to be. They do blue for communication, and I thought they did green, but that's more dogmen and cat people. But the blue is more, they're interested in communicating. If you see the blue eye shine, but the red one was basically saying, "You're near one of our colonies. Back up a minute." And
yeah, where that red eye came from, I had just been back there, and I was like. And I was in a nest. You could totally tell it was a big blind. So you know probably better than most. As the winter comes, right? The season, the weather, trees change. The leaves fall off. they're more exposed. So they start to take all the vines and any of the trees they can manipulate, right? Like the vines and the thorns and this and that. And they manipulate them and they make like nests and blinds and all these things out of them. And I bumped into one of those and I was just like in it out of nowhere because I was in the darkness and I was like, oh, okay, here I am. And I just kind of backpedaled out of there, you know. But so when I got about 100 yards off, I looked back and that's where I saw the red eye coming from. So,
Yep.
you're probably right.
Yeah.
So then, in a higher vibration, is like the tribe there sleeping, and like here's Mike on a lower density, like basically tromping through their camp?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You're seeing some of the living quarters of some of them, or some of the camping areas, and then there's also the ones that are closer to our vibration that do this as well. So you see them intermingle. What is actually happening? It's just like let's see if I can describe this. We went to a place in North Carolina. When we were walking along the Neuse River at that time, we saw this vine structure that was made into like a doorway, and I walked through that. And the forest people had alerted me. I just walked into someone's house, and I'm like, okay, we're good. And there was a forest person that approached me, but started communicating with like sign language, like this. I could see him because I could see into his frequency, but this is how he was communicating. Was doing that. And one of the other forest people that communicate had to translate because I didn't know their sign, and basically said I'd walked into his domain, and he was a leader of a group that was there. So what we did is we came back and we brought a big bag of cookies with us, and we set it inside the doorway of this vine structure, and then came back again and it was gone. So it was like they can phase in enough to grab that and eat that, but this is essentially the same.
We didn't stay long. I think this is one of the keys that I'd like to stress is that if you are, sensing that you're amongst some of their presence, and again, what happened to Mike, the way that we show respect is acknowledgement and, wishing well, wishing their highest good, wishing for continued, and then you show respect by leaving. That it's a slow building of a relationship.
Absolutely. And I get bitched at by people all the time. Well, if that really was, why didn't you stay there? Why didn't you go towards it? Why didn't you do that? I said, look, they gave me what they wanted to give me, and that was that. I do not push the boundaries. I just don't. I get what I get what they want to give me, and I move on, and that's it. I don't push the boundaries.
Regular people, what what is a reasonable expectation? It's way simpler than you think, because first of all, you must learn in a lot of situations how to move yourself to that center and be at peace, that neutral place. Yes. Then again, if you're in a place like that, in a nature area, most people, again, whether they realize it or not, are first, you call everything a psychic skill, but it's an expansion. It's expansion of feeling. It's an expansion of all of this stuff. And usually the feeling and, or let's say imaginary center, intuition grows before sight, grows before hearing. It expands a little bit that way. So
Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt. When they telepathically communicate with you, doesn't that also strengthen now your telepathic?
Sure it does. But if you can do that, then what would a successful visit be? So if you go to an area that people are having experiences, and you can get yourself, as Mike's saying, don't go in a bad mood. And then when you're there, you're still going to try to center yourself some. And you go there and you just can even sit peacefully for a little bit. Just sit peacefully. Explore your own self. What are you feeling around you? What are you feeling that's out there? Now, some people can start to really have a sense, no different than if your back was to a door and you knew somebody just walked through, but you didn't turn around and look at them. Mm-hmm. So that expansion of the intuition and feeling, because what you're doing is feeling the energies first, right? Mm-hmm. So you may feel that I don't feel I'm alone, But how do I feel about that? If you're feeling at peace and you're not feeling like you're being told to go, then basically, you have a moment, to acknowledge that something else could be around. You need to acknowledge how it's making you feel, right? And then basically, sit there for a moment and learn to be at peace. Because again, you will be having a little bit of an energetic communion with something. And again, it's not something meant to be there for hours and hours and hours. Have it, understand that is success. And then you grow it slowly from that as your energies and your ability to control things grow with it. We seem to be in a society, unfortunately, I call it the instant pudding effect. Everybody wants instant pudding.
So,
And
Joanna,
so
someone does that method, like what Mike's doing, showing respect, cultivating that relationship over time, over seasons, over time, is that where he'll get to the point where now they're actually visible to them? They're visible to him, and it's like not doesn't really take any effort on his part.
Yeah, it'll be easier for them to communicate that way. Like with Fuma here, this guy. He met me halfway to be able to do this. Okay,
so that's a halfway thing where you're elevating, you're moving up in frequency, and he's coming down in frequency.
The one thing I do want to say to that statement, though, Brian, is that if it's meant to be, because again, some people could just be doing an exploration of, I want to, rather than have sight or hearing, I just want to expand my feeling and intuition. So people get a false understanding of growth that you're nobody unless you can see. I have to tell you something. Sight is the most deceiving. So anything out there can change its stripes for a minute, and you're relying only on your sight.
Using the psionic ability.
And you haven't developed that.
So the telepathy first. The empathy, telepathy.
Yeah, really expand that. And so people think, because again, when you're expanding it even into this situation, what you're not realizing is that you're beginning to apply it to everyday life. Why am I choosing that? I know I don't really want to hang out with this person or whatever. You're applying these because you're learning to read something you can't see, which is the energies of things. So the more you're able to do that, and in these crazy times we're in, to get out and to bring yourself to these places, you need to understand again what success is. The key to all of this is when you really start to grow is that you're in a chaotic situation, but you remember the frequency of that neutral, and you can literally be in chaos and you can bring yourself there. It's almost like then you're looking at from the 70,000 square foot level, a little bit detached, but you're not letting the other energies or whatever interfere with you. That's the growth we're supposed to be doing. That's the growth that they want to see us doing.
So is that a little bit of dissociation is good, or is it you define as different from dissociation?
It feels like dissociation.
It feels like it, yeah.
Well, so like I'm empathic. I've always been empathic, but I never knew what it was, right? I never necessarily knew what I had. And then like my first Sasquatch encounter was full on flesh and blood, right? And then there was a lot of time after that where it wasn't, but because I had learned meditation and Reiki, I had gone through Reiki and I had learned life energies and stuff, I can tell when they were around. And not just when I was getting telepathy, but I would receive like downloads, almost like just knowledge, would just be like, boom, like just given to me. And it wasn't like, sometimes it was verbal words, but other times it was just like, here you go. And it's like, oh shit, I understood what was going on, and there's other times too where sight is, like you're saying, sight isn't necessarily possible. They may want to show themselves to you, but they may also know that there's something unsafe that we might not see in the area, whether it's a bicyclist or a hunter in a tree or a satellite or whatever. We don't know, because once we expose ourselves to the fact that we have relationships with these Sasquatch, you can bet your bottom dollar that the man is piggybacking off.
Then Mike, this raises an interesting question. how come it seems like these cryptids are so good at seeing trail cameras? Is it because to them they're seeing like a glow off the camera?
No, they know I'm coming before I know I'm coming.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So for me, if I tie something on, you know what I mean? That's like somebody walking while you're watching Netflix. Somebody walks past you and removes the faucet off your sink and then leaves. Like you know what I mean? You knew
So then
Yeah.
everybody
you
has
saw
an
the whole
energy
thing.
signature. So again, they know the differences between what are the energy signatures and they give definition to what they are. So you have to understand they're not necessarily, some are the ones that are more like us, but others have an expanded ability to see frequencies, to see. That's how they know the type of person approaching them because they've already read the energies of the person.
So what if you're a crappy person, but you bring them like lots of their favorite snickerdoodles? Like I gotta ask, like, what if you want to? I'm not saying if you want to bribe the Sasquatch, but
Well, it's not
what are good
impossible.
gifts? What are good gifts for them?
Oh, I just heard depends on the tribe. That's all I heard in the background.
Okay.
Honestly, I think personal intent is the best thing.
Yeah.
When people ask me what should I gift, I say whatever you think is best because you want it to be personal. You know what I mean? You want it to be as personal as possible because you're subconsciously already doing more than you know. Now you're even if you're on the fence, if they're really there, you're putting down something physical and it's from the heart, or you know what I mean. I've even had my kids do like drawings for them, and it doesn't have to be something like monetarily.
Like, would they rather have a Brian the Solar Bee glow in the dark sticker,
Sure.
or would they want like some blueberry lemonade?
It depends on the tribe.
Depends on the
and
tribe.
where they
Okay.
are. And like
Okay.
he's saying, so some of the things that we've gifted have been shungite, have been, like I've really had this stone for a run. I've really liked it. But you know what? I love it so much. Now I want to give it to you. There's a lot of love for me infused in it. I give it to you in peace. Do you see what I mean? So it can vary. Some of them want donuts. I mean, you know what I mean? They're no different. The one area that we haven't spoken about when we talk about encounters is probably really important to speak about. I'm assuming Chris will channel as well, is adolescent Sasquatch, because a lot of the ones that are taking the chances to have experiences with humans are, I'm going to say, unsupervised adolescent Sasquatch.
So it's kind of like the Amish kids. It's like the old Amish don't want their pictures taken so much and whatever, but the younger Amish, if you ask respectfully, sure, I'll be on your TikTok.
Right, and they take chances. They're no different than our adolescents that are kind of like, those adults, they don't know what they're talking about, right? So you have to understand that some of that is the same. So some encounters, and again, you want to see rage, then see, a teenage boy's rage go into effect, right? So
are those the rock chuckers?
Yes, and they can do, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the areas that's been discussed with us has to do with how do they, just like us with our teenagers, how do they maneuver, you know what I mean? And again, so the teenagers, sugar is bad for them too. Don't get
it's
it
worse
wrong.
for them. So,
but I mean, so how do they even handle their own that are growing up in this weird situation where they can influx and outflux and do all of this stuff and keep their own, because some of the psionics also affects them, affects their children. So it's again, a lot of the
like our negative mentality living under the Luciferian rule that we do telepathically could bleed to their adolescents who aren't as mature and shielded,
energies
and that
are
can negatively influence them.
Sure, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the nefarious energies that are not natural, that are being beamed our way to affect us, also can enter their frequency as well.
Oh, I've seen it affect.
And so it can, so there's a bleeding in that can occur to them as well. So there are times, depending on what's going on, that they may be more incognito than even communicating with people. We've just gone through a period right now for several months that a lot of people who channel may feel like they haven't had as much communication. There were things going on, energies that were present that they didn't feel like it was the safest time for them, that they kind of needed to pull back. They send their love, they send whatever. But again, they also are experiencing, maybe not to the degree we are, but are experiencing.
Because we've all been coming under attack recently. The community has been talking about this Project Oblivion is a name for it. And so it sounds like the energies are pretty high for them. And then from a security standpoint.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then how do they, I'm going to use the word so that everyone gets it, and I don't think they're going to mind. When they're bringing in their next generations, they don't want them to de-evolve more. Can you imagine it? Just like us, what is the goal?
You mean they don't want their kids to become millennials?
They don't,
Pretty much,
right?
yeah.
Right? Right?
I'm sorry. I just had to get that in there.
Dynamics exist.
Sorry, guys. Sorry if you're a millennial out there.
Gen Zers, yeah.
I'm a
Yeah, but no, it's
millennial.
real. That exists.
I mean, a Gen Zer, and I love you all, but
yeah.
I'll give you shit too.
But my whole thing is again, for me, and we were talking about when people can see them or not see them. So one of the interesting things, again, that Mike was saying that is such a true statement, if you're known for the communicating, and then you're always being watched because they may be tracking, and who are you talking to? Then maybe then I can go and figure out where they are, who they are, whatever. And so that is very real as well. I think
you're talking about the bad guys now. So like if you're in a military abductee person and the secret space program and the derp state is literally targeting you as an individual, and then now the well-meaning Sasquatch communicate with you, now the Luciferian deep state could potentially lock on onto
Yeah,
them.
that's happened before.
That's
yeah,
part
that's
of the
happened before.
goal. So I think one of the important things to understand is, so again, not that they're helpless, not that they don't have, abilities, not that whatever, but you also have to have that protection. So I'll give you some examples. So for us, what has happened is that we may not feel anything. We sense things, but not feel anything. And Chris and I will be together. This happened in Japan. This happened in Yorktown, where it was me that caught the side-eye glance of a Sasquatch walking through the forest. Just like it was this quick. Basically is more of a flag to, we are here, but we're going to find a safe way to communicate. We're not just going to open up. And they'll do things like that. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like saying, instead of being like, hey, I'm going to talk to you for 5 minutes straight on the radio, open line for everyone to pick up, I'm just going to chirp a couple of times so I'm here, and that's good
and
enough.
then we find a way. So like, again, some of the things Chris does with channeling is he's developed certain things for them to send their energies through so that there's not necessarily a direct, that's why you see him using crystals or using certain edifices or using certain things to provide safety for all concerned.
Just like I took the three bus types of the forest people that you've seen and made a triple pointed edifice where they could talk through it. I had 3 copper pipes, inside this tower buster, and that allows them to communicate. They wanted that big piece. They have probably the most advanced one on the property at the moment, is the forest people. And
Kind of like this. I have copper in the bottom of this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it says something.
And so
Very
again,
similar, yeah.
so what they're going to do for their protection is, again, they'll find a way. Again, the easiest way for people to get to know them is what we're talking about before. Start at the beginning and understand how valuable that is to growing you as a person and to growing these relationships. Don't think it's unsuccessful. If you've gone someplace like this and you really feel, at peace, God knows that's hard enough to do. If you feel at peace and you feel like something, just wonderful sitting there happened, that's success. You have to understand, you have to take and then grow it from there. So a lot of people can have, let's say, success. You have to define a new definition of what does that mean when you're really trying to ground proper foundational relationships.
So success isn't going out and on your first camping trip getting HD video and molds and footprints and your Harry and the Henderson moments.
Oh, that can be if they allow for that. I've noticed that they will, if once you form that communication, they want to be able to aim at that first. They want to be able to reestablish that communication. If all you're focused on is just the evidence, they're not interested in speaking to you. So they will give it to you when they form that relationship.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I was going to ask if Arkeem and Mike and everyone, if you guys thought would now be a good time to bring one of or any of them through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I noticed my nose is starting to itch, which is telling me that the energies are starting to get charged. So
should we do the prayer, the blessing? And
yeah.
Arkeem and I spoke about this. We like to dedicate our episodes in general have different dedications, but a big one is to the children who are still in whatever bases or whatever programs. That this is what this episode's dedicated to, and I know you have a wonderful blessing as well.
Oh yeah, do you want to do the little one?
Mm-hmm. Mm. We are all one. And when one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. Therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, that only the highest good be done. We pray for you, your friends, your family, to let healing energies in. Let them love you, let them nourish you, and let them bring you to your highest good. We ask for benevolence now with no conflicting agenda to please join us now in this conversation. We ask for the benevolent Sasquatch, again, with no conflicting agenda, to please join us now so that we may have conversation. We wish for that energies to now stream forth to the people that are listening so you can feel the genuineness and the intent of healing energies coming your way, and of the genuineness and intent of having a peaceful communication with a brethren that also lives with us as well. And with that, and with all of the healing blessings that we send your way, as well as asking for malevolent and mischievous beings to be swept aside now so this communication can happen easily and unhindered, we are saying we do agree with this, we want this to happen, and so be it.
And so be it. Okay. There's one that came to me. This might be related to what you do, Mike, because there was another one that came to me. He just said he was a sentinel, and he called himself Uram.
Okay.
And he came to me earlier before the show came on, and I get some from many parts of the country, many parts of the world. And he said he was specific to this conversation. So I believe I picked up on when I was looking at your photographs there, Mike. So it was they can, like, they'll lock on to the photograph. Like Fuma, he uses that photograph of mine. So a lot, because if it's their own image, it's your own image, you connect to it. So
yeah.
Man, is that charging here? Wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. Who? I know Uram, and I know there's other ones present. I welcomed all benevolent forest people to communicate through the communication arc. They wanted it hidden in the yard behind a bunch of like plants growing around it. They are using the nature as a filtration so that it doesn't get disrupted as it comes out there. So the transmission. So Uram, are you the one that wanted to talk? Mm-hmm. Yeah. He said he was a sentinel, meaning guard of a colony. And if I could describe him real quick, he's tall, has bigger, wider shoulders, like the narrower neck type, and he has like a grayish blackish hair. So rounder face. He looks kind of like Fuma a little bit. That particular picture. This particular one, he has a similar description to him. You can see there. It's similar to, he's similar to him. So I can see them when they walk through. One time when we were in Arizona, I saw them walk literally past the window that you could barely see through them. So they came in pretty loud and clear. So, and he's coming in pretty loud and clear too. So give me a moment. I'll get situated here. And a couple of others are chuckling at this because I have this little foot keychain here, and they're laughing at this. I made these years ago, and I had one left, so I just had this sitting here. So, and then they're going, no, this is the size in comparison to the other one. Okay, so, and their jokes are true because they're saying, see, size matters, bigger foot. Don't, Isaac. Okay, let's see. All right, Uram, that's your name. That sounds almost Arabic. So
Some do, yeah.
yeah, so that sounds almost Arabic, and some sound Viking, Scandinavian.
Even Greek, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, all right, Uram. Ooh, that is strong. Boy, they want to interfere with this one. The others. Excuse the interference. As was said earlier in your program, the interference is because they do not want this kinship, this camaraderie. And also the fact there are many eyes on a live stream. So more of us were needed to be present to combat signals coming through your YouTube signal. There are ways of combating this. If you put sigils like theirs in the stream, this tends to cut back on that interference by quite a significant amount. Things of that nature, putting blessings in the stream, putting blessings either before or after, however you wish to do it, your law of one, all of this for the program. Now, with this, you all were wondering, the particular one that you saw in your photographs, did that seem familiar to you at all, Mike? You're hearing the voice of that particular one now, you see. So this is how I communicated with him, was through your photograph. We do not necessarily always need a solid artificial thing. It helps quite significantly, but photographs help also, just like there is energy in a photograph. Things can be trapped in photographs as well. Many believed before it trapped soul energy. This is not true. They are actually more conduits, you see. So yes, the area in which you tread upon was that it was actually myself. So I told him that I was from his area, but I was basically, it was more of a jest saying, yes, I'm in your area, not from your area. I'm actually from your area, Mike. So this is actually who you got on the photograph. Now, the reason you saw the red eye was actually a form of warning. I was actually doing what I was assigned to do, you see. With the red eye, and he was wondering why he only saw one. It was actually more or less giving the side eye, or eye like, just one towards you, like this. His mother saw this in a dream as well, saw a local forest person communicating in a dream state with a blue eye doing the one like this. Dragons will do that with a big creepy green eye in your face, but I jest because there are a couple present that are benevolent dragons, and I don't mean the other creepy things, but I'm just joking because there's one present on the property who is lacking in sense of humor. But I did not expect a large, a fat, gorged dragon sitting on his property. So I actually, that threw me off. But this, and they give me the finger. But anyway, in this instance, the communication is the show. I do not channel much, so I got distracted easily by the glutton in the corner over there. But in this, you may hear a bit of an accent coming through. That sounds almost Scandinavian-ish in nature. It is more of how can I describe this? There is some Scandinavian in there. There is some Middle Eastern influence in there, since the Vikings did actually merge with some of those cultures. So you're hearing a localized accent. to your area as well. So this is what my job in this is to guard a colony and to make sure that anyone approaching is, you would say, authorized, but we're basically checking frequency. Also, if you come too close with a how can I put this in your English? If your frequency is off the marker, you would say, approaching the colony like you did with those pictures of the teepees and such. It's nothing against you. The colony will go, oh, okay, bring in the sentinel, which is me. And also, we are also more of a communications ambassador as well. But I was more warning, do not approach. And we were near the farm, as you were saying as well. There is a colony near there, but now that we are more acquainted in this way, we have now forged more of this relationship. We are willing. The group is willing to communicate. There's about a dozen others with me here. When I say we, I don't mean me as some incoherent energy, non-I am form. So in this, so I will go into questions if you wish.
Let me just go ahead and get started then. How about you go ahead and describe a little bit of your colony and its lineage? And, because we've run into some that seem to have an elder and whatever, but describe your colony.
In this, we do live in a flat, but also a hilly area that goes into an underground area. And in the frequency we're in, we do have the teepee huts as well. We actually... we consist of roughly, the number varies when other groups join us, but roughly we are 300 to 400 at the moment, and this counts other groups coming and going. So you would actually only see at any given time myself and maybe a dozen others. With that, the children and the female portion are much further down and into a cavern system where there is a quartz deposit within that. That is a form of communicating that way. So with that said, there are many children there. There's also a local elder as well. This is actually. He will try to communicate at some point as well, but he is much older. He's of the Anakam lineage. I am his descendant, you would say, grandson. There was also another one that he was seeing in his mind that was messing around a little while ago. That is my son. So he's more adolescent. I myself am actually much older than I appear, even though your Fuma that you've communicated with was around in the time Jamestown was in operation. I am roughly slightly younger than this. I'm roughly 200 of your years old. So the Sentinels usually stay in an area for quite some time. We live approximately, at least my part of the lineage, we live approximately varying based on what happens in circumstance, but without it barring any disease or anything of that nature, or weird energies and anything like that, or attacks. I would more than likely live roughly 600 to 800 years old. That's because of some of the lineage differences between Anakam and the descendant lineage. I'm in between both of those. My grandfather, he was around the times of Atlantis, so that places him between 10 and 12,000 of your years old. Even though he's much older, that is more the fall time frame. So I hope this answers this.
We got a question from the audience. Any knowledge of Sasquatch that has a blue ball, and I'm guessing like the blue energy ball kind of thing, used for tech of communication. And this is from Kairos Towns.
Yes, the blue orbs, of course, some of them are tiny spaceships. He would call them like TARDISes, where it's a bigger on the inside kind of thing, where people see us zipping into them and existing in that. Other races use that same technology. That's why it's confusing. And some of them are also manifestations of ourselves as well, where this is our energy that people are seeing. This is why sometimes tagging along with our people see orbs. A lot of times they're little spaceships, other times it is elemental energy. So it's roughly 50-50, I should say, within that. That, I hope, answers this.
Okay, we have another question from the audience. This is kind of unique. This is from Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot, and they say, I believe humans are 12 different tribes mixed with the ET from the 12 star signs. The two unknown tribes are natural ones, being Bigfoots and mermaids. Can you confirm or elaborate, is the question.
Yes, there are multiple tribes that actually are related to humans. Mermaids, mer people are indeed related to yourselves. We are related to yourselves. Humans are basically, to be polite, it would be more of a mutt race that actually has come from deep from another galaxy, actually, that colonized different areas, very much like your 65 movie, as you compare it to. And you are essentially a mix of multiple tribes. You don't necessarily have to attribute a number to this, but mer people and yourselves and ourselves are indeed related, but under the purview of more Poseidon and the mer people and their different tribes and different leaderships. There may have been mutated differences between your DNA and some of the fish type groups here on Earth. Also, the energies and magnetic field here on Earth would cause a differential in the way some of the eugenics alterations would take to how can I put this, ground here. I'm trying to struggle to find the word in this. The dogmen ran into this. The Antiquan dogmen ran into this too, or you would call them like Anubis type people. They ran into this, had to breed a different version of themselves to be able to exist here. The muscles got bigger and they became more, in some instances, more Neanderthal-like. In this instance, yes, that assessment is correct, but you don't always have to attribute the number to it. There's actually quite a bit more than 12 or 13. Just some have attributed the number 12 or 13 to things, but there are a lot more genetic variances included in all of us.
Thank you. Uram, I have a question. So last summer, for the 80th anniversary of the Philadelphia Project, time travel, Arkeem and Mike and myself and many others were there at the east end of Long Island near the Camp Hero, Montauk base there. And we were doing energy work to heal the grid and do what we could to help the sailors on the Eldridge and to help any of the souls trapped in the area and hadn't gotten to cross over. Can you comment on were you or any of your people observing us and what what results do we achieve, if any?
Yes, we do observe these instances on a lot of times where people heal areas such as that. Like in your records, I am seeing when you went to Gettysburg and the like, and places like Long Island, Montauk, and all of these places that are war torn. Yes, when you go to these spaces and hold this space, you begin to change the very fabric of the energies by even being there, the intention by which you are entering the space in. Your intention was to actually heal that area. A monumental task, I might add to this, and may comment to this, but the intention, that seed, that little fire that you have created begins to spread in other areas, even time-worn wounds like in other areas very similar to Montauk. Montauk happens to have a very deep-set wound that intention, that seed that was planted, and I'm not denigrating what has been done. I'm not saying it was very tiny. No. What I'm saying is you did help out quite a bit being there. We do observe and actually record what you are doing. And when I say record, some of us do literally record things. but we remember these things. We remember the actions of humans doing these things, sometimes just for the sake of doing them and clearing this. And from this heart space, we remember these actions, just like the forest people in your Nightdale area years ago noticed that he rescued a caterpillar that was on the table, and they normally they wouldn't think to look at this, but they noticed that he did it with a particular intention. If something's an accident where you accidentally hurt something, that's different. Like what it was explained in your Washington state when he accidentally stepped on a banana slug. But this particular instance, we see those particular actions come from a particular space, you see. Therefore, that bodes well with the communications and the frequencies, and seeing an evolution in the communication between ourselves, as well as the altruistic act of helping those that were stuck within those programs. One key note here, temporal, what is the term you use? Where it's interlocked into a multitude of paradox and fractal never words, where you have bits of yourself in those. This is actually starting to heal itself in that area where that particular chair tech was activated. So with that said, it is actually any alters that resulted in this and paradoxical timelines. Think of your Marvel for a minute when the TVA was collapsing different timelines. It's very similar to that, or like in your Deadpool Wolverine dynamic where that timeline was collapsing. Very similar in that he had this in his mind, the concept that he's seeing these particular programs for a reason to be able to, these movies for a reason to be able to quantify that in his mind. This is what is being done by that healing. I know that was a mouthful, you would say, but
well, let me on the Thank you. That's very helpful. Because it's where it's clearly we're doing something that seems to like plant the seed in this instance, and then were you able to see like what does that look like on the etheric? I mean, I'm around some of the people were commenting that they're seeing orbs of light shooting out of the ground, and what does it look like in the etheric and beyond the normal 3D vision that most of us have right now?
There are souls trapped in a place like that, and there are soul traps on places of the earth where there's soul trading and all this other crap all are being done. But in this instance, it would look like an eruption of not only orbs but kind of electricity. From our perspective, think, you have your Highlander with the quickening kind of thing. The Draco tend to have this capability where you cut their head off and it does that thing. That's where they got the idea from for the Highlander deal. The whole there can be only one cut the head off thing. That's what they got the idea for that. Think of these plugged areas as similar, where you unplug it or uncork that, and the energy begins to flow. The earth energies begin to flow, and any soul fragments, fragmentaries, timeline fractures, things of that nature begin to heal. Fractures, there is a fracture on the Montauk site, the Camp Hero site currently, but it is shrinking to the point where it will be nominal in time. Your Skinwalker Ranch is a large one. Your Bermuda Triangle is the largest one on the planet. But this particular one, they chose that particular area for that reason. It's also a ley line intersection. What this looked like was an eruption of little orbs of light and lightning bursts from our perspective. Very much also, if you pop a wine cork and some of the liquid comes out, it is and some of the fizz comes out. That's essentially what that looked like. You basically
and those were trapped souls.
Yes, and also fragmentary timeline. It looked like, think of a tree branch or a burst of lightning with the little juts off of it. And this is what the fragmentary time. You would call these paradox timelines. I believe. And this is essentially what was created. There could be fragmentary versions of yourselves trying to then inhibit the very act if you were one unfortunate enough to be in the chair. So
by doing the healing, it helps the timelines to heal, and it allows those souls that were trapped in those never words to also cross over because there's resolution there.
Yes, this is also why Arkeem, why you brought that particular topic up. This is us thinking of this because we were in that area with you guys when you were healing this and watching this take place. Some timelines, I know this sounds cliche, but some of the things were never meant to be in that particular way. They were more of the term mutation of the temporal, if I could, the temporal field that was there. The natural form would be timeline jumping and things of that nature. What they did was basically an abomination to nature. But to seal that is actually healing a very long-standing time wound that they still continue to try to access even to this day. By you doing this, you kick them more. You would say you kick them in the ball sack, pretty much. And this is something we totally agree with doing, because they inhibit us with this energy as well. It affects us. It affects your kind. Affects my kind. Affects other cryptids as well. And it needs to be sealed.
Mike was able to detect that, the sorrow upon the land.
Yes.
By Council Rock, there's particular sorrow, and then also Colin, one of our in Montauk buddy, he recalls stomping on the ground, and he had in his third eye he was seeing some kind of crystal, maybe red crystal technology deep underground being knocked over and shattered. Did that happen? And can you explain what is that technology?
One of those fragmentaries or paradox jets. It was on the same spot, but displaced over to one of these jets. You would call this the backstage, I believe, where it's an exit off of a highway. Like basically you just went to a gas station on a highway, but they can literally copy an entire timeline of no one on it but them. And the aliens can do the same, where they could abduct you to a place where there's nobody on it but them. This is why you see some people wake up and there's nobody else around. They're on basically a photocopy of the timeline, and they caught themselves being abducted midstream. So in this is the same thing, where that device was on one of those fragmentaries that was being deleted. It fell over and then done. And that's exactly what you saw.
Okay, so sorry.
I think one thing I would like to go back to with the Bigfoot, and we'll get to that after we got one more question from the audience, but I would like to sort of get back to like our relationship with them and sort of our future. While the Montauk subject is always fascinating, and they were involved in that as far as they showed up and stuff, we do have one question from TKB once again, which is a little bit interesting. I don't know if the Bigfoot would really know about this, but I figure, it's an interesting question, so let's ask it. Was our moon a drifter from Jupiter, then Maldek, then here, or elaborate? Which I don't know if the Bigfoot.
This goes into a bit of your galactic history. It was actually commissioned in a distant solar system in the way back time, you would say, a very long time ago. The one you know of as Odin and the Asgardian kingdom actually had this created. And this was something that was supposed to help guard the solar system. When the bad guys invaded the system, they took it over and tried to retrofit it to use it as a doomsday weapon, to basically aim it at you guys. It no longer has that function. They tried to turn it into a soul trap. It no longer has that function. It's essentially caught in a geosynchronous orbit, and it's essentially, you would call it a moonship, or the Venusian colonies would call it a moonship. This was essentially made to be a guard, essentially, and this is where Lucas got his idea for the Death Star type of thing from. And a couple other moons in your system have that seam around the center of it. You see remnants of this old technology in your system, like the monolith on Phobos and places like that. You start to see, and they don't particularly care for the word Maldek. That is a reptilian word. I'm being told from the Asgardian group, correct them on the Maldek thing, because
is it Tiamat?
No, this was the kingdom of Asgard, actually, and the Ragnarok was what blew up the planet, and you see the asteroid belt as a result. This was essentially the Ragnarok of the gods. So this essentially, it's not going to happen. It already has occurred, you see. He likes to say, if it's something that is undealt with in your own past, you are actually seeing ahead of you, but it is behind you. This already has occurred in your history, and you are actually getting communications from the remnants of those particular people from that time. And Maldek is a word, a draconian word, meaning ours. Planting the flag. This is ours. This is not yours.
Audrey Walters says that as well. She says this exact thing.
Wow, that's interesting. I remember when I was on Maldek, people would get mad at you if you called it that. So
Yeah, because it's a slur.
It's a
Arkin,
slip.
you just called it Maldek again. You're very unpolitically correct, brother.
And also, so is the term Bigfoot as well. We prefer forest people.
Okay, so
I'm going to go back. Let me ask this real quick for because the one thing that you guys may not realize that I really want to come out is that anytime a new clan, tribe, however you describe yourself, group decides to come on and talk, my nerves are shot because it is not a little decision for them to be willing to do this. Because again, they have their own safety issues. So we've dealt a lot with a lot of same tried and true people that we deal with, but there is and there has been an expansion of some of the forest people from different areas who want to also make themselves known. It's not a willy-nilly decision.
No.
So what I was hoping, so that Mike would understand, since you're local there with them, what you guys did as far as the decision making for you to even be speaking tonight, and then what are some of the goals that you hope, for Mike's sake, and as far as continuing on with growth and communication with him and people like him in the area.
Mm-hmm. Yes, continue doing what you are doing, Mike. It is wonderful. It's just that we were literally showing you. I was showing you again the red eye because of the fact that you were near a colony, but the conversation has evolved to the point where you won't necessarily get the red eye anymore. You'll more likely get blue. So that would be communications. We automatically flip to the red eye when there is danger. Yes, your current court jester you have on your property over here is basically saying like the Spaceballs robot girl had the red eyes when there was danger. Yes, I know I'm not up to date on your movie history there, Isaac. Yes, but yes, essentially correct. The whole the dot matrix had the red eyes when Dark Helmet was nearby, kind of thing. That's really stupid. Thank you. But anyway, you can thank the resident half tall white on the property over there for that. But anyway, he uses movie references there. But anyway, he will speak to that on his own time. Thank you. But though he had to interrupt. But essentially, the analogy is correct. We do the red eye when we are either sensing danger or we are sensing interruption within the energy field that we are investigating, or if we're hunting something. So it really wasn't, how can I put this? Wasn't you per se. It was the changing the energy field from a fluctuating frequency that was approaching our colony. That said, we know you have the open heart, and we know you have a desire to communicate. So therefore, you more than likely will not see that again. Sorry for the interruption from the other, but this is essentially the analogy holds.
We got another question, which I think is a pretty good question. Do you know what those rod-shaped and skyfish ribbon-shaped objects are in our camera? And are they like the orbs?
No, these are dimensional creatures, essentially like what you would see underwater. You know those microbes that you see underwater, and also the little, not jellyfish, but those little underwater anemones and things of that nature. You are seeing things of this nature that are traveling through and bleeding through into your dimensional space. You see, with every layer, there are sets of creatures and there are sets of beings. Now, are there ghost fragmentaries that are some jellyfish looking things, and there are these fish type beings that are pretty much assholes? Yes, that fling these things at people. But these little ones that you are specifying are essentially interdimensional. You would see them as almost like crustaceans, And like you would go to the bottom of the ocean and see all the bioluminescent life forms. That is what you are dealing with.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Thanks for answering that question. Mike, do you got any questions for the forest people?
No, that's it's that specific area is off limits at night, and I mean I know that it's a like I call these specific areas like they're similar to like reservations for the Native Americans. They're set. Hold them 1 second, buddy. They're like specific areas for the Sasquatch, and I know this, and I don't usually go in at the dark, after dusk or before daylight hours. And when I do, I tread very lightly, and I kind of knew that I might meet a little bit of resistance, and I didn't want
Be
to.
a tripwire, yes, basically an energetic tripwire, yes.
Yeah. So as soon as I saw anything of the sort, I kind of knew that I was kind of interfering a little bit because they do use those. I was told by them when I went in there at one point, do not call these teepees. These are our stick pyramids. And they're energies, and they're connected to one another, and they're connected to the ground, and the sunlight beams down to the tips at some points, and they have a lot of purposes for them. And I try to tread lightly and go in respectfully, and if I meet any resistance, I do back out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's exactly what we were attempting to show you with that situation. Yes, it is cordoned off for a reason. You were also mentioning earlier the tree breaks where you felt like we were putting that energy back together. Yes, in some cases this is true, but this also denotes boundaries as well. So it is both meanings.
Thank you. That's helpful. I appreciate that.
And it was long ago during the, you would say it was about 3,000 of your years ago. Unfortunately, the Native American peoples and ours got into a little bit of a skirmish, as it were. And what ended up taking place was it was a misunderstanding that draconian forces ended up causing a divide between our peoples. There was also another similar race to ours that actually were more goblin-like, and they ended up stealing some children from the natives, and the natives blamed us, and then we would hurl rocks back and forth, and that's a horrible bit of our history. What ended up happening was the native peoples ended up cordoning off, like almost like a reservation type of thing. The energy lingered for a long time. Here comes your U.S. government, and ended up doing it to the descendants of the natives. So it was a lingering wartime energy, very much like your Shining is with like the hotel that had all the creepy stuff on it, or like a Battlefield or Montauk or any of those types of things, where it's a lingering time wound that needs to be sealed, you see. And by reestablishing this relationship, that cycle then is no more. It goes to the flip side of the vibration, very much like if you have a lineage curse and you have a type of behavioral trait in your lineage you no longer want, you flip it to the opposite polarity. This is what is being done by healings such as that.
And that's probably a good conversation to build on just for the people listening. People may not realize the healing that they're doing to themselves and to the lands just by walking places and doing it, that there may be, of their higher self, more of a guidance to go and do things in places that they may not realize that they've done. And I think that's an important comment, because people are always, they don't really know all of the wonderful things they have done in their lives, let's say, you know what I mean, with communing with nature and doing different things. They're only thinking, I've done something if it's so loud and out there that I get acknowledgement for it. But it's the small things, those little undertone things that are being done all the time to heal.
Monumental, yes.
From the past and from things, because many of us have not we've done this a lot, and we're trying to undo, like we've got our Rubik's Cube all messed up and we're trying to slowly undo it, where we're walking our footsteps in places we've done before, but we're doing it a little differently energetically.
Yes, and you're walking also your own footsteps from other past lives as well. You're bringing other lifetime cycles to a close as well by doing these things from the same lands that you have walked upon. You're walking through your own footsteps to resolve. People call it karmic cycles, but it is more or less ongoing energy cycles, like what I said about the Native American forest person dynamic I said before with the U.S. government. It's something like that, where a lot of things that you are not seeing completely, but the oversoul does, that is coming to a head and then is changing polarity. Any further questions?
We have a question from the audience. Did the forest people have any interaction with Yeshua?
This is a complicated subject, so I will abbreviate this. That story of your Yeshua is not what it appears to be. This is something that your Roman Empire came up with centuries ago as a form of a control mechanism. But I will say, however, we have come across people from other cultures that are of a loving mindset and a loving energy. Just because one story did not happen as you think it did, there are others that fit the profile. And yes, there was a particular set of beings that came both also from Lemuria and some from Atlantis when they were attempting to broker a peace during a neutral time frame. One of these beings, after the disasters happened between both continents, Mu and Atlantis, came forward and existed amongst our people for some time. This is the one that in the Lemurian lore that they call the peacekeeper. They associate that with Yeshua, but this was another being, you would call him Enlil, that tried to fuse his story onto the peacemaker story. If you want to look at the religious control mechanism, look no further than that being that was crowned Lord High Commander of the Earth by Anu in your Sumerian mythology.
Is that Marduk?
No, Marduk was the son of the one you call Poseidon. That's a different story. The Enlil would be more your Luciferian figure, but also Loki figure in your Norse mythology. The Roman Empire created the Jesus figure or the Yeshua figure to control that of their citizens. This is why they wanted to merge the stories together of all the other good-hearted stories. So, in short, the Peacekeeper story, the one we are referring to, is the being that people are connecting to, that is within our culture, even as we speak. He is of a Lemurian group. You would see him as almost a Hawaiian-looking person. He is actually, he's not on any council per se. He has encountered the very group he is a part of. He encountered a Lemurian group with somebody named Tuhalm and a few others from a Lemurian group in another frequency, the same as us. So this particular person looked more of like a Hawaiian person and was with us and still continues to interact with us. That is where some of the story is coming from within the native tribes, and it got merged with Christianity after a while. I do not wish to offend those listening currently, but this is where this is because the question was asked.
Okay, I got a really funny anecdote from the audience, which also could turn in a question of just, is there any truth behind this? Lowest spiritual science says my clairvoyant friend from Norway saw Sasquatch when he visited the U.S., categorized them as elementals or something, maybe I'm saying that wrong, and laughed at the fact that the European elementals wear clothes and the American ones are all naked. Is there any truth to that?
Actually, yes, to an extent. There are, how can I put this in short? There are some groups out there that prefer no clothing. There are some fairy-esque type groups that prefer no clothing. Some of the ones that you call the Moon-eyed people, Cherokee, these were of a fairy tall white derivative that preferred that in their own realm. Here, the elements were much harsher, you see, when they came through. Your sun tends to be quite harsh towards some of the beings that aren't ready for it. Hence why they wanted some human hybridization. These are some of the people of the world you call Lanulos. So this is where this fits in. Now, over to Europe. You have some elven varieties over there, which is also part of some of these other tall, whitish, Tuathan, Danann type groups. Some of them are quite, let's just say, prim and proper, you would say. Your Isaac would say they are extremely anal, but they want prim and proper. They won't want anything shown. They don't want to do anything in that world. Then you have their cousins over here that were absolutely nothing. So they just attributed to cultural differences that have cultural divides that have cultivated over the centuries of some of the descendant lineages. Like some of your nudist groups, for instance, in your own cultures, tend to get it from some of these groups. The same with the Mer people, also like that. Some of the Mer derivatives are exactly like that. That's where people are getting the nudist type mentality from. It got bastardized by turning it into a cultish type of thing in some areas. I'm not denigrating all of them.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
There's something that I do that I've done for a long time. Whenever I enter a new area, woods, forest, wherever it may be, whatever climate it may be, I always take off my my boots and socks, and I put my bare foot, like whether it's snow, sand, moss, whatever, I put my bare foot down and I leave my footprint, and then I also put one of my handprints down, and I feel like I'm showing like that I respect their culture, and that I'm also giving them my identity, and everything of me, and in hopes of return that they'll open up to me in the same fashion. And I don't know if it's a ridiculous gesture or if it's something that they respect.
No, it is respectful to them because they do the same. We walk barefoot on the earth as well, you see. So one could say we walk around naked. That is not exactly completely true. Some of us do wear armor, things of that nature. There are some of a lot of us do walk around without clothes on. You're just seeing a lot of hair. So that covers everything. So it's essentially like wearing a big coat. So if you shaved one of us, you would look like one of you. And then some of us would have bobbed and also some pointed ear variations as well. But to your comment, yes, that is actually preferred because that is a form of regrounding. You see, nude or barefoot or variations of the both under the sun will ground you very, very quickly. And you're also showing the respect in the analam frequency, meaning the calm and the reground. You see, this is exactly what you are doing. You're getting this from other lifetimes, and your oversoul is giving you this information, as are we.
And the intention. I think the big thing here is because you could also have someone who did the same thing, but what their intention is saying, I'm marking this is mine, and I'm coming after you. Believe me, they would know the difference.
There have been plenty of them.
So you could have the same exact thing being done, but with different intention. So they're seriously reading the intention that comes along with it, and don't think they are fooled by just symbolic gesture.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, there's a lot of people who say to me, "Oh, you're so loud out there. Like, how do you think you're gonna, you're not gonna sneak up on one?" I'm like, they knew I walked in before.
We were aware of you when you woke up in the morning. Therefore, your intention was to come to that territory. You didn't even need to leave your house.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions?
I just want to comment. Thank you for being here, and to your people for allowing you to join us tonight. I want to say that in all the years of my life that I've been trying to do research on Sasquatch, the forest people, I'll get like little bits and pieces, and in this show we've gotten to cover a lot of territory today, and I think anyone interested in this subject, I'm really happy to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Also, I hear in the ethers, somebody is asking me what my name means. Uram. It means large one, meaning I encompass a large space. If you saw how tall I was, I'm roughly 12 feet tall, and I'm actually very wide at the shoulders. So somebody in my family named me Uram because I was actually large when I was a child. And no, Isaac, I did not have a pituitary gland malfunction.
One thing maybe the audience doesn't know is that, the interjection of playing back and forth, humor, things like that, because laughter is a very high frequency.
This is why he does this, but he does it with the enthusiasm of a what's the term I am putting towards this, a preschooler. So in this particular way, and it gets other beings to laugh, and this is the reason for this banter back and forth. He would be more like the clown type. We sometimes will utilize the humor slightly differently. He is more attached to more your Beavis and Butthead culture, but this is more. I'm more the let's just say I don't want to say I'm more distinguished, but if the shoe fits the big foot, okay.
We'll just say refined.
Yes. Which is ironic because I don't wear shoes. So that's our humor right there. That's more the dry, deadpan type of thing.
We'll just leave it to you. Anything that you would like to share or bring forth for the audience to hear?
I know I've said quite a lot. Some of my brothers and sisters said I am long-winded when I talk to humans and establish this particular link. We like some dragons like to talk quite a bit. You have seen in your Skyrim and Elder Scrolls lore where they always say, like your Parthenex said, he'd like to talk. Dragons are like this as well. Forest people are like this as well when they establish a friendly contact and frequency match to ourselves. We are elated and overjoyed by this. So I will cap this conversation off with this. Remember this. Adhalam, always, meaning remaining in the calm, no matter what the situation is that comes to pass. Yes, defend yourselves if necessary if things happen. But remember, not all things deserve, what's the term I wanted to say, an unstable platform. No, they do not deserve you being at your worst. They deserve you being at your best. The calm in the I am presence. The Anhalam is what is needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Ooh.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, his energy is quite strong. When they're around, it always feels like there's a thumb right here on this part of the forehead, right here, and you'll feel a pressure right here. And this is when they're around, that pressure builds on this spot right here. And sometimes the bad guys will attack this spot because you're actually communicating like that. Their frequency is pushing on you a little bit. They had to tone it back a little bit. They are actually a very fast moving frequency. So sometimes it might feel like you're being crushed on that spot. They don't want that to take place. There's an old story about a Tibetan monk sitting in a temple with two forest people, and they're in a meditative pose. And it was very hard on that particular monk when they were literally there completely in his frequency space. He could barely tolerate it, even just being in the calm state. It's because the frequency differential was still too far apart. You'd almost want to feel like you're going to explode. So that's what they don't want to bring that down on you. So they toned it back a little bit so that I could talk to them or do the channel.
And much of that comes, like we're saying, to this part of your body that you feel it, but then you discern and you'll feel from this part of your body, whether even though you're feeling that you feel somewhat calm and okay, or a sense of dread or whatever, that you should leave. Do you see what I mean? So you can feel that pressure.
And also, if you're dealing with a being that is very fast moving frequency, if it's a lot, your body might react as if it's encountering spirit and thinks it's dying and recoil and react too. So if there's a big enough differential, so the cells might react very strange, like it's not familiar with that, thinking it's like spirit or something like that. So
discern, that's what discernment is. What is good for me now? So if you think about energies being like on this bell curve, there's an acceptable amount, right, that you can handle. And then there's, let's say, negativity, and there's benevolence, but it's too high. Both of those ends will kind of feel the same way. It may just mean you're not ready for something
If
now.
something's too powerful, it might feel like you want to recoil. But
Yeah,
that is
and fine, come back to it at a later time because you're still growing.
Mhm.
But that's another misnomer out there, that there's a strict difference between malevolence and benevolent energies. And no, if you're out of your range, it could feel the same on either end.
And also, the malevolent ones will feel like your bones are being crushed. So that's totally different, even though some people have mistaken one for the other because one's extremely immensely powerful and one is immensely malevolent. So some people have confused them in that area. I've seen that quite a bit with myself, where I'll feel something powerful. It's like, why is my chest feeling this? It's because something is potent, not necessarily bad. I was feeling the head pressure. That meant their presence. So this is, and I felt it here on this space. That meant their presence. So I'm going, all right, this is just them. They're just extremely powerful. With that, I'm going to close my little personal circle here. I close the circle within true benevolence, not conflicting I have to do that when I do channeling. If I forget to do that, if I leave a conduit open, there will be other things that try to hijack that. If I leave a string or a portal open, something on the other end could grab that and give me a bad time for the rest of the night. So I usually have to shut that down. Also, sometimes it's difficult for me on live programs or in public, but when we're at the conference this time, I am giving it a shot to actually bring through. It'll be the 40 people, but or Isaac, you'll be sorry if you let Isaac talk on a mic for 2 hours. He's going to do the whole stand-up night if you let him do that. So it's like, so if that's what everybody wants, but
well, you know, that last thing you said was I thought was very impressive, and it hit home. It was very important for me because one of the main messages I got from the Sasquatch was that they loved me and respected me because I was a warrior that knew my peace. And I didn't really understand the verbiage, the way it came through, but they said, you're a warrior that knows your peace, and we love you for it. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And the message there was, you know, I was in the military, I was in war, I was a fighter, I was a scrapper growing up. Like I did bad things, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm very good at that thing, you know, that going to that dark place, right? But I worked really hard to find my light and to work my way this other way and to always put that foot forward. You know, I don't go to that other spot. I can very easily, and with the best of them, there's really nobody that could tangle with me in that position, but I just don't do it, right? So that's something that they made a point to me. And when they made it a point to me, it even meant that much more, you know, and I strive for it even more to this day because of that particular message that came through.
Right. So that warrior energy for obviously defense, the trueness of literal defense is wonderful to have. But a lot of warriors are present now. And it's because the goal is, how do we learn to transmute energies in a warrior fashion, which is not physical beating, right? How do you take that mass amount of energy that would normally be used in a warlike situation, but to transmute and heal, Brian, and heal, you know, certain areas with such strong intention? How do we learn to do that to make a choice of the new type of experience we all wish to have? And so you're exactly right, Mike. It's kind of funny because for just a strong warrior type person, they feel, well, I'm just diminishing myself. And it's really not like that. You're actually becoming way stronger in a different, more relevant to this time area.
Yeah.
So how do I make a difference as a warrior now?
It's a better you, yeah, you know. And like, it's like just a simple, like, just to simplify it, if somebody cuts you off, do you chase them for an hour? Do you chase them home and fight them? Or do you just say, hey, maybe that guy's got his pregnant wife in the back car and they're racing to the hospital, you know, and let it go, you know, whatever. Like, it's just, it's a mindset and an outlook and you know, and It's not an easy thing to do, but when you start to transfer yourself into that person, it's all about muscle memory too, you know.
But you're moving the energies now, not your physical body.
Yeah.
Again, not taken away from the need to have that physical body and that ability to do that. But it's now about how, instead of doing it that way, am I moving energy and
Yeah.
having energies work for me?
And also, I was going to say, you know, the one branding that we created, the World of Sasquatch, I found out there was more meaning behind that when the forest people help us do this. It was more conducive to what we've been talking about. I found out that this afternoon, if I made some holographic stickers out of the new logo we got made for the World of Sasquatch. And what I'm basically telling the Sasquatch is that wherever I put that, they are welcome. And I'm thinking, okay, this is their energetic footprint, their energetic presence. We called even our friend Bjorn Ragnar's son, when he made these logos, he put the word exclusive on there. I don't think he understood how powerful at the time when he made it, how powerful that was. It's exclusive to them. You are basically saying this space, you're welcome within it. And that's what the World of Sasquatch logo actually meant. And
they have one with me too. They have one that they gave with me, and I was kind of spoiled in the beginning because I went right into telepathy, so I kind of skipped over glyphs. But like what you said, they don't all, you know, do that. Some of them speak with glyphs and whatever. And then I bumped into a tribe that spoke with glyphs, and they have a Y glyph, and the Y is basically these two pieces are Sasquatch, humans, you know, Sasquatch and humans, and coming together. And that's when I see that, that means that I'm allowed to advance and connect with them. And then, you know, and like we were speaking about the X's and stuff, and when I see that, I don't go forward, and you know, all these certain things.
Yeah, I had that when I was a little kid. I was about 11, and I was in a place outside of Independence, Indiana, and with my father, we went to reenactments when I was younger. And I wandered into this forest area where he told me not to go across this field from where the campsite was. And I went across there, and I went further into the wooded area. I saw this massive wood X up like this, and somebody was showing me that. And I feel that's a validation now, but somebody was showing me this large X that was woven out of two sapling trees that they had just bent together and then lashed together, and it was this big X that was like this, and basically saying, "Stay out of here," but this is us. So I saw that when I was 11. That was quite a few years ago, but yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. What they said about your tree structures and everything too. So yeah, they're going to be around you a long time, and they're around us quite often when they're able to speak. I mainly hear Isaac's voice all the time, and I just heard somebody say, "I'm sorry," but
I've always had a tough task because where I had my I do a lot of work up in the Catskill Mountains and different areas, right? But I where I had my original encounter was on Long Island, which is a, you know, suburban, highly populated area, right? And like, I always had the tough task of like people being like, so, no way, you know, no way, they can't be there, and I'm like, I didn't dedicate my life to this because they're not here, you know, like.
They can be. I just heard they can be anywhere they want to be. You
know? Yeah, so, right.
Exactly. God. That's very interesting. But
so I think I don't know if there's anything else, Brian. You know, that I think it's pretty good. I think this was a pretty good conversation.
I think this may be a good stopping point. You know, right?
It's a good stopping point. I want to thank the audience also for being with us, and you know, please check out all our other episodes. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Share us out.
Yeah, it helps,
hey, Eddie Soto.
A lot when people do that.
It really does. We got to, because the algorithms, we're under massive banning and censorship. Yeah. And so it really does help us to get around that. And also, if you think that there's, if you know hosts of other shows and podcasts and think that any of us should be on any of those shows, please help to link us up. All of us appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Well, I guess with that, we're going to wrap up the show. We really appreciate everyone being here. Just a reminder to everybody that the Patreon that I got is only $5 now. So if you want to further support the channel, I highly recommend checking out the Patreon. And yeah, just have a great rest of your night, everybody. Make sure to check out thelifting.net. Make sure to check out Mike's channel. It's all linked in the description. And yeah, thank you everyone for being here. Have a great rest of your day, night.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.